Wow. We are out of the trenches and into a proper Imperial city. Praise the Emperor. Wait just a second. I don't see any skulls. Who are you people? Shh. Guardsmen, this isn't the grim dark future of the 40K. This is the grim dark past of 1999. You might be wondering why we're talking about Warframe and not Warhammer 40K. That's an easy question. It's because they sent me free minis with no obligations. I've never painted anything like this before or know anything about Warframe. That is until now. Remember, guardsmen, one does not simply refuse free minis. That being said, let me know if you like this style, and if you do, we'll try out another Warhammer minis. Let's get started. Step 0. So it came in this little box. It still had the supports on it, so I had to remove that, and I primed it in Mechanica Standard Gray Rattle Can. Step 1. We are going to base the flesh in Cadian Flesh Tone. You want to make sure that your paint isn't too thick, so you might want to water it down just slightly with a little bit of water, because you want thinner layers of the skin, because if it's too thick, it's going to be hard to paint on later. Step 2, we are going to base the Warframe suit, or at least I think that's what it's called, in Corn Red. Make sure it's slightly watered down so it doesn't go on too thick. And once we wash this later, it's going to be a really nice base coat because it's going to get really dark. So when we do the highlights, it's really going to pop. For the gloves, we are going to use Caldor Sky. You want to paint those gloves all good and done. And once you're done with that, you want to get a small, fine, pointy brush. Now there's little breaks between kind of the armor, little grooves, and that's where we're going to paint with that Caldor Sky. Now with that small, fine, pointy brush, you want to make sure that it's watered down just slightly until it's an ink-like substance. That way it's going to be easier to glide on the mini. Put your brush firmly against it, and you're just going to glide it along those grooves. And it's going to be easier to just try to go between the grooves and then try to make your own lines on the mini. Now we are going to base the JoJo hair in Abaddon Black. We are now going to use Death Corpse strap. We're going to want to do all those straps that are on the mini, and if where that little pauldron area is, it has this little green area right on there. I also did that waist bag along the hips and the little straps around the legs as well. To make this look like girl eyes, we're going to start off with contrast black Templar with a very small fine pointy brush. You just want to make sure that you have that paint on the tip of that brush, and you're going to want to fill in that entire eye with that black, and then I just went a little bit on the side. Next, we're going to go get a pure white paint. You're going to want to water this down just slightly with some water. And you're just gonna do your best to paint that little oval section in the eye, leaving some of that black on the top and the bottom. Once we are all done basing the mini, we're gonna use Nuln oil. We want to put a good coat all over everything but the flesh. And if it's too heavy in some areas, just make sure you get a dry brush and soak up some of those areas. For the skin, I washed it in Seraphim Sepia. You want to make sure that you're not doing a very thick coat on that wash. And if it gets into the recesses, into the eyes, and it's heavy in there, you want to make sure that you get your brush and soak up some of that paint, or it's just going to leave these gross bubble watermarks on the eyes. Now for that skin tight bodysuit that's underneath the armor, we're going to use Mechanicus Standard Gray. Now I use this medium sized brush that's slightly larger, and I water down the paint until it's an ink-like substance. And we really want these muscles to have a strong contrast. So I did the Mechanicus Standard Gray, and I did blocks in the armor, kind of just following the natural muscles that's already on the mini. And you want some of these unnatural lines that are darker, because this is going to leave a stronger contrast, and we're going to build up these colors, and it's going to look really cool at the end. But we want even brighter highlights to help them stand out even better. So we're going to use Dawnstone Gray. We're going to do the exact same thing. We want to water down the paint just slightly until it's an ink-like substance. That's going to be easier to glide on. And we're just going to go over the areas that we just painted in that Mechanicus Standard Gray, but we don't want to fill in the entire area. In some areas, I just put little lines around some of the edges, or in the very middle if it's a slightly smaller area that we highlighted in that Mechanicus Standard Gray. Now for the Warframe suit, we're going to start off with Mephiston Red. You're going to use a smaller brush, and I just kind of focused along some of those inner areas on the red and stayed away from some of the edges, like in that stomach area, but I would do the edges that's like on the pauldrons. Now for the Mephiston Red, we just want to focus along the middle and along those protruding areas. This is going to be the darkest of our highlights, so you want to do it in larger sections. Now to build up colors on the Warframe suit, what we're going to do is I'm going to use Evil Sun's Scarlet. And we're just going to go over the areas that we just did in that Mephiston Red. You want to make sure your paint just slightly watered down so it's easier to glide on. You want to focus on the most protruding areas. So you just want to do it in smaller sections. So if you did the Mephiston Red like this, you want the Evil Sun's Scarlet to be on the most protruded area within that Mephiston Red, so that it's really going to kind of help stick out. We wanted the armor to almost look like it's kind of got a shine to it. It's like on the gauntlet, I left purposely a darker area. I made it brighter here and on the top, but I left some areas alone and darker. Now to really make it look like there is a shine, we're going to use Emperor's Children or just a pink. When you use a smaller brush, you want your paint just slightly watered down so it's easier to glide on, and we're just going to focus on the most protruding areas and some of the edges. Now we don't want to overwhelm it with this pink, or it's just going to be too much. We want to work small and build up slowly because you don't want to do it everywhere. You want to leave breaks in the shine in some areas. You don't want it to be complete, or it's just going to kind of take away from the pink. For the gloves, we want them to look shiny, so we're going to start off with Caldor Sky. And similar to the legs, we want to do it in blocks. So if this was like the glove, we'd want to do some areas like on here shiny, so make this like blue this blue and leave those darker areas in between. Or like on the hands, we would do blocks on the hands, but we want to leave some of the areas darker, and this is going to help make it look shiny. To really make those gloves stand out, we're going to use Bare Ruth Blue, which is like a very bright light. And we want to do it in smaller sections that we just did in that Caldor sky. So if like this was the top area hitting the sun, we would brighten this area up with that Bare Ruth Blue, maybe add some lines, but we want to leave some of those areas dark. So if this is like the hand, we would paint these little sections on the hand, leaving it dark in here, then adding another highlight. So we want to have breaks on there, and we want to do it in little sections where that sun would hit it the most. For the flesh, we're gonna mix about 2/3 Cadian flesh tone with about 1/3 contrast Guilliman flesh. You're gonna mix that all good and up, and I used just a slightly medium-sized brush, but if your mini smaller, I would use a smaller brush. And we're gonna use this to help darken some of the areas on the face. When you look at the face, this area tends to be a little bit brighter, and this area tends to be a little bit darker on the mini. So what I did is that I just painted around the head and darkened up some of these areas along kind of that underneath that cheekbone cheek area, and worked my way down so that this area was darker. And if you were doing a mini without doing all that detail in the eyes, I would also make it a little bit darker in that eye area. Once you get that area that you want darker, you're gonna go back to that Cadian flesh, water down slightly so it's gonna glaze on all nice and smooth, and you wanna focus on those areas that are highlighted. So in that's gonna be like around that cheek area, the nose area, and the chin, as well as that area right above the eyebrows. I typically like to just kind of slightly tap it in so I don't overdo it in these areas. For the JoJo hair, we're gonna start out with Xerxes purple. We want to do it in larger sections, so where those hair has those breaks, we're gonna leave those breaks alone, and we're just gonna paint in the larger sections all the way to the top of the hairline. This is just gonna be a larger block, so they don't need to be like thin little lines. Once you're done with that, we're gonna go to Gene Steeler purple, which is like this lighter purple, so you can just mix your Xerxes with white if you don't have it. And we're gonna get a small fine brush with the paint slightly watered down, and we're just gonna do little lines for the bright highlights. And we just kind of want to build some of those up to the top, and I just focus on the area that I just did in that Xerxes purple previously. It's coming together, boys. And I have a second one. And remember, it's heresy not to like and subscribe to this video. And if you want even more content, check out my gaming channel at Nougat Kitten Gaming.